Hey listeners, we're nearing the end of our 15th anniversary fundraising campaign, and we need your help to meet our goal. This campaign offers you a chance to win a unique food and music experience in one of the most exciting cities in America. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and you'll be entered to win dinner for two and 2 tickets to a concert in one of 8 amazing cities: New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Ardmore, Pennsylvania, and Asheville. All donations support our work educating food system storytellers. And when you donate, you can choose one of those cities and you'll be entered to win dinner and 2 tickets to a show. So help us reach our goal and enter to win dinner and a show in the city of your choice. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. Our Master Cheesemaker program is one of the only 2 in the world, so it's no wonder every master in America has called Wisconsin home. Find your next favorite cheese and meet our makers at wisconsincheese.com.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guest is James O'Brien. We'll talk to James about Popina, dealing with the pandemic, and of course wine. We'll taste a rosé from Liguria from Italy that James was kind enough to bring in. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Jersey boy James O'Brien earned a degree at the Institute of Culinary Education after graduating college and worked his way through Danny Meyer's Union Square Hospitality Group at Tabla and Mayolino, where he met his eventual partner, Chris McDade. So the question has to be asked, don't answer yet. How did 2 guys with Irish-sounding last names open one of the most admired Italian restaurants in New York? James O'Brien is the co-founder, owner, and GM of Popina in Brooklyn, also responsible for the wine. Popina, along with great food, serves up a wine list of unique depth and value. Welcome to the Grape Nation, James.
Thanks for having me.
I've been looking forward to talking to you because just as we were talking off air before, I'm in Jersey, so I'm geographically undesirable to hang at the restaurant, which I would if I lived in the neighborhood. So it's nice to sit down with you. We are recording today at the Heritage Radio Network studios in the back of Roberta's. So it's fun to be doing the show in the studio. It was kind of James to take a walk over and sit and talk with us. All right, James, so we could frame the interview and give everybody a little background. Tell me about your journey in life and wine that got you really, today to Popina.
All right. So early days, I had no idea what wine was or what it tastes like. It wasn't our family didn't drink wine growing up. My dad and mom were more, I guess, they grew up in more of that vodka culture.
Oh, okay.
Like vodka sour,
they weren't
vodka
teetotalers.
martini. Yeah.
They just weren't wine people.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah, exactly. They drank a lot. My dad worked on Wall Street.
Okay.
My dad drank a lot, I should say, but all in good company. But yeah, we didn't really drink. There wasn't wine on the table growing up. Like a lot of other wine professionals that kind of got to try it at an early age. And but for me, I went to Marist College where I was bartending and DJing to kind of just like make some extra money. And then after college, I started bartending at a slightly more elevated establishment in New Jersey called Stonehouse at Sterling Ridge. And from there, It was still very much like the catering side of the because they hadn't had opened the restaurant yet. So I was working a lot of the catered events, and I met my girlfriend at the time, who was a chef over there, and she kind of like turned my world around a little bit. I was like used to pouring shots of Jameson and drinking Jack Daniels and all that, bud and nothing, So when I say bartending, it was a very college bar, And so when I started working here, I started thinking more about, what people were drinking, classic cocktails, and it was a slightly more elevated version of what I was doing. And then as we started going out, we, started drinking wine, and it, very much started with, going into a shop and being like, oh shit, I don't know, Pinot Noir, that sounds good. Cool. And then, and she also kind of, I was a very picky eater growing up. So that was also, her favorite game, to ask what haven't you tried, right? And so it was a lot of like, nope, hadn't I didn't eat eggs until fresh or senior year of college, or just these like random games of like, oh shit, like this dude eats like pasta with butter and chicken fingers. Like
You're like a 9-year-old.
Yeah, for sure. And it was incredibly embarrassing, but as I started to date her, my palate started to I started to explore different foods and different drinks, and then I was just like kind of into this whole idea of like hospitality. And I thought of bartending more as like not just a means for money, but I started thinking about it as like, oh, cool, this could be something. So then you fast forward to I'm like, shit, I'm gonna do this. So where do you do something in the hospitality industry that you want to do for real? And then so I moved to New York, and after college I moved to New York, and I think that was '08, and I went to Gramercy Tavern for my birthday lunch with another a friend, and so.
That's the true elevated experience.
Yeah,
right?
so, for sure. And I remember sitting at the bar. It was snowing, and the bartender was like, "What do you want to drink?" And I was like looking at their cocktail menu, and like I was just like so like overwhelmed with like excitement that. And then they were just like, well, what do you like? And I could help, because I had no idea what was even on the menu. Like, what is chartreuse, or what is this, or what is that? I was just like, I recognized bourbon, or, and so I was sitting there, and the guy was like, well, what kind of flavors do you like? Do you like spicy? Do you like sweet? Do you like, do you citrusy? Do you want like it spirit forward? And so like I started like thinking about cocktails and bartending and flavors in a whole new way. And so, obviously a 4 or 5 hour lunch there, puts you in a good, hey, I want to work for this guy, Danny Meyer, And so.
Is that why you went to work for Danny?
Yeah.
Because he does have a whole mindset, and Gramercy projects it like nowhere else.
For sure. And I grew up, my parents were always very supportive of whatever I wanted to do. But, my sister's a lawyer, my other sister's a pharmacist, like James the bartender, it just didn't have the same ring, So, so it was that at that time that I was like, oh shit, I'm going to enroll in the Institute of Culinary Education. And I took their management program, because I was like, wow, like this is something I want to do. And, I started reading a lot, and just, every day just being like, what was going on in the restaurant scene. And I applied to, while I was in school, I applied to a bunch of Danny's restaurants, being that didn't have a lot of New York experience. The only place that would have me was Tabla. So I went to an interview there. Had a really great interview, and I started as a bar back, and then just graduated to be a bartender, and then from there, I worked at, when they closed, because I worked there for like the last year. And then from there, I went to work at Myelino, where I was like, I'm a bartender at Tabla. I was like, I want to be a bartender here. And they were like, how about a back server? And so, yeah, exactly. But I just, it was exciting. And I just wanted to,
You hung in there.
I felt really good about the place.
You were determined, to take the hits and grow and start at any level.
For sure. And honestly, I didn't have any experience like on the floor. So I was learning how to carry 3 plates. I was learning table numbers, position numbers. You're going from bartending where you're either making drinks for service bar or you're making drinks for the person in front of you. You get a food order, whatever. This was like, there was like a whole new dance on the floor, So Myelino was a great...
What did you move up to do more stuff there? Or,
yeah. Well,
at the end, what were you doing?
For sure. So, I went from bartender, or I'm sorry, a back server, food runner, to server, to when Myelino had that, they didn't have sommeliers, but they had like almost a floor captain of sorts that were selling wine and educating staff. I was helping Liz with that. And then as I progressed, I bartended, and then I eventually ended up as a manager there. And there was some breaks, where I left to go travel, and I came back, and I left again, and so it wasn't, but it was a long time.
Were you engaged in wine? Like, I know for an Italian restaurant, they had a huge champagne selection, right?
Yeah.
And then they had a very cool. Were you of the mindset, like, all this stuff's here, how can I taste it? Who can I hang with?
Yeah, so funny enough is to kind of go back to the place Stonehouse. I actually, when I was there, they were opening up the restaurant portion of the restaurant, and I was sitting in on staff training for that. And I remember they had a master sommelier or some person with some kind of title come and give like a lecture and taste us on all the wines by the glass. And the general manager at the time like called on me to describe a wine. And at the time, I'm this like picky eater that, I don't know that at that time that I ever like had a strawberry or a blueberry or whatever. I know that might sound like crazy, but
you're the most ungardened garden steak.
Yeah,
guy,
for
right?
sure. I mean, completely embarrassed to even say this, let alone on air. But I was extremely picky, and basically this guy like put me on blast in front of the whole staff. He was like, what do you live under a rock? He's like, you don't know what what I told him the wine smelled like? I said it smelled like grapes, and and he just put me on blast, and I felt incredibly embarrassed, and because I was like the guy there, right? And then all of a sudden, but like wine was not my strong suit. I was, you needed to know where this is or that is, or make a cocktail, or the fire department came in, and I was the guy that was like taking the stuff off anything that you needed, I was the guy except for wine. So
more utility than like the cool stuff.
For sure.
Right? Yeah,
for sure. And so after that, I kind of had like a sour taste in my mouth about wine, right? I was just like I was just like, is this what the wine world is like?
So it was because of the people and the culture that you saw, right?
Yeah. Well, I was like,
these guys are assholes.
I was like, is this what I want to like be in restaurants for? And so then it was Myelino so Tabla was more, I was like slinging Kachumber coolers and tamarind margaritas.
It's an Indian restaurant, in case people don't know.
For sure. And so it was not until Myelino where I met Liz Nicholson, where she actually made me fall in love with wine, because she was talking about the little old lady on the hill that's a farmer and has a little dog, and how they're taking this indigenous grape of the region, and like that's the kind of shit that I wanted to hear about.
Peoples and stories.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that was definitely more of what got me into wine, and I stayed at Myelino, and as I worked there, you saw Liz ended up leaving, and Jeff Kellogg took over. And Jeff Kellogg, Liz was more of like the romantic side of wine, right? The people, the places. Jeff was more of like hey, like this is was more of like technical, and he certainly had fun with wine, but I think he like did tasting groups and not only like tasting groups like, hey, like let's just open up some wine. It was, hey, this is, it was like, this is fucked up. Like I would always bring, like I was like the guy that used to bring like the wines to like trip everyone up, and he'd like always get mad and be like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, you bring grapes that like you like, we want to like the whole point is to like go down the grid and like taste
Right.
and
You went off the
discover
grid.
wine. Yeah, I was like bringing like the most fucked up examples of like grape
Was
varietals.
that because you still didn't know much then, or you were kind of screwing with them?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to. Well, I think part of it was screwing with Jeff, because it was like, you know, if you could screw with Jeff, because he screwed with me every day. So I think part of it was that, and the other part of me was like, it wasn't like these wines were ever like they might have been costly or this or like I thought like people could be excited about them, and I guess I glanced over the point of the actual group, and then I obviously started bringing like textbook examples of things, and that's when I got the most out of the group. So he taught me more of a technical approach to wine. So when you take the romantic side and the technical side,
good path.
yeah, for sure.
For you.
And yeah, so that was my Alino experience.
So you meet your now partner Chris at Maialino?
Yeah.
He's cooking there?
Yeah, so he opened the restaurant as like a line cook, and then he went on to be a sous chef. And I always felt when he was Maialino was an incredible restaurant, and
Very cool. Breakfast, lunch, dinner.
it never
Hang
never
out.
closed, right?
Great wine list,
Exactly.
champagne.
And the amount of people that came out of that restaurant and went on to go do great things is truly remarkable. And that opening sous chef team, or that sous chef team after a couple of years when I went, was remarkable. And Chris was one of them. And there was something about Chris and the way he managed. He was always at the pass. He was always cool, calm, and collective, and he took everything very serious. And I just like felt like he really had a good grasp on running a kitchen and managing people. So
So you start hanging with him?
you know what? We hung out like a little bit here and there, but it was. I went to go travel. So I left Maialino twice to go travel the world, and just went all over. And on one of the trips, I was writing a business plan, because there wasn't really much to do when you're trekking in Nepal, and you can't. There's like literally no one around to talk to. You start journaling and writing stuff. So I just started writing things, and what did I want in a restaurant, and I just started just thinking of everything. And
so when you're doing that, do you think like, hey, Chris is a guy that could fit in, or that doesn't come up while you're doing that?
No, so it doesn't come up because I'm not like really. I was thinking about everything, but I wasn't actually pinpointing the chef. I was what kind of
chef?
What kind of restaurant I wanted. It was a very neighborhood restaurant, and this was the type of glassware, or this was the type of vibe. It was more so the concept and what the servers were wearing or whatever. And
Is what you were thinking about then, is a lot of it what's there now?
yeah, for sure.
I mean,
and,
that definitely, you kind of got it. That was the foundation.
yeah.
Got to, a more evolved point, executed, but it looked like that a lot.
Yeah, so I think I take that. I have this journal and just overall just thoughts in my head about what I wanted the restaurant to be, and I think my friend Chase kind of reconnected with
Zinzer?
Chris. Yeah, for sure.
Not a lot of chases.
Yeah. So Chris at the time had gone down to Atlanta to go open up the steak bar with Kevin Rathman, I believe is
But
his name.
he's from Georgia.
He's from
which
Georgia.
We'll talk about a
Yeah.
little, because it reflects in the food to some extent.
Without a doubt.
All right, so go ahead.
So then
Chase.
So Chase I think reconnected us. We were talking about the other day on how we actually reconnected, but I do remember the day that we did reconnect. It was Chris's birthday because I found out later that day, and I was like, dude, I had no idea it was your birthday. I would have bought you a drink or something, but we ended up getting coffee. And we basically, I had this journal of things, and I said, this is kind of the restaurant I want. And a lot of it connected, right? Because a lot of it was built upon what we experienced at Maialino and just this overall, and maybe this kind of goes back to your intro about two Irish dudes opening up an Italian restaurant. We found a lot of similarities in the Italian trattoria or the Italian. Not only the food, but if you go to Rome, some of our favorite restaurants are these places that you just go in and you just feel at home.
Well, tell everyone what Popina means.
So Popina is like a slang term for like a dive bar or like a place where people just meet and
but love being there and hanging there and go there, which is part of your plan in Nepal, that a community place.
For sure. I mean, it's all about my friend showed up the other day and he just got back from like the Adirondacks, and he's like, can I sit in your restaurant like in this t-shirt and dirty pants? And I was like, yeah, Popina, like we welcome everyone. And it was important for us to have a place where, sure, you could go and celebrate, and a lot of people do, but you could also come once a week and get a bowl of pasta and a glass of wine. And we want to be that communal place.
So you show Chris all your work. He likes it. Tell me a couple things. When was that about? What year? And then how long after that do you really get physical and open the place?
I want to say that was like 2000, either at some point in 2015 is when we probably had our initial conversation. And then I think it took us 2016 of looking at spaces, and there was a lot of, oh, this is promising. Oh, we're completely defeated. Oh, this is promising.
Ups and downs like crazy.
Yeah, and so we were all over the place too, to be honest. I mean, I wanted.
Well, that's a lack of experience to some extent. You're
Without a doubt.
learning trial by fire.
Without a doubt. I mean, and I'm incredibly grateful for all the people that I went to for help and that guided us and just offered a little something to us who never did this, right? So we were looking in Williamsburg, we were looking in Financial District because we wanted neighborhood restaurants in our own, backyard. And then, we ended up getting hooked up with this broker, Keith Durst, who is like this hospitality, he runs FOC, which is this amazing, they like basically connect people in spaces, but then so they have like a real estate, and then they basically they're the people behind a lot of these very successful.
They have a lot of the pieces,
so
like under one roof or with one guy. That's good happenstance that you kind of come across a guy like that.
And they were working with I think at the time they were working with James Kent and Jeff Katz to open up
Crown Shy.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, these guys are talking to us, and now we joke about it, and he's like, yeah, we believed in you guys, and they had no idea where it was going to go, but
you proved them right. So you guys opened the place what year?
2017 is when we got the keys, February, and then we opened. We did Friends and Family at the end of August, opened in September of 17.
And from Feb to August, you're like getting furniture and building the kitchen. I mean, you're active all the way through.
For sure. I think I'm like still working 2 days over at Meckelberg's behind the bar, pouring beers because I'm not paying myself, right? Because we did
and why could you? Yeah.
We did this on a bare bones budget. It's I hit up all my like college buddies. I was like, hey, I'm opening up a restaurant. You want in? And
that's pretty cool. All right, we'll come back and talk, specifically about Popina. There's a lot to talk about there. But I want to get your take on a couple of things, because it's hard to sit down with guys like you and not get stuck talking about the pandemic. Do you feel that you guys have recovered from the tough part of the pandemic? Where you're moving forward, or You know,
Yeah.
some people went out of business. Some people changed the concept. I mean, where were you at?
I think if we were open, if the pandemic happened in year 1 or 2, we would have been fucked. But I think that the year 3, we kind of finally start to gain traction with the neighborhood, and
And experience and confidence
for
you
sure.
guys.
And I think what was amazing is what the pandemic showed me, and that's a sense of community and the sense of a neighborhood restaurant. And there were neighbors that came up to us
So
that
so address that, because my next question, which really plays into that, is tell me about the things you had to do during the pandemic. I told you I don't want to go backwards much, but I
yeah.
mean, you did cool stuff during the pandemic to stay afloat. But to what you just said, there was a mindset about how you wanted to go about it with a sense of community. So, what were some of the things you were doing when it was like the worst of time?
Well, first off, it was pretty amazing to and kind of big shout out to Chris, because Chris had my business partner. He had, he has a kid, and a lot of people like took the pandemic and were like, hey, I'm just gonna spend as much time as I can with my family, because we live in an industry that you don't always get a lot of family time, right? And Chris did an amazing job at balancing the idea of being at home and getting that time with his family, but also saying, "Hey, we have a responsibility as business owners to show up and engage the community, right?" And me and him, for 2 years, 3 years leading up to it, it's like if it snowed and everyone else was canceling, closing, we were open. If it was a hurricane, we were open. We were always open because we wanted to be that place. And some days, on the snowstorm days, like we wouldn't do really any business, but that one person that didn't cook, that wanted a bowl of pasta, that stuff's powerful. And
agree.
luckily. Chris was always there to kind of support that idea of the neighborhood restaurant and what it means, because it's so easy for it to snow and be like, hey, I just want to stay at home, drink a bottle of wine and hang, right? Because we're gonna make $500 today. What's the point, right?
Right.
And I think the point is that you do that for long enough, and then you build up this sense of community, which essentially saved us, because people, like, we had neighbors that would come over. There's this one guy that lives in back of the restaurant. He's like, you make my life better. Here's $1,000. Let me know if you need more. I don't care what you do with the money. You need to be here at the end of this,
So to acknowledge what you were doing and support it.
and
Crazy.
What he said.
You can't ask for a better customer community of customers.
And what he said is the overall driving force of what we do every day, and that's, we want to make people's lives better. We're not like, we're not curing cancer or doing anything like that. But at the end of the day, if you can make New York is a very hard place to live in, right? And if we could give somebody a bowl of pasta, a glass of wine, a smile, any of these things, and we made their day a little bit better or a lot of bit better, then that's amazing.
So get specific for a minute or so. You created a market. You realize your food doesn't travel well, so you created kits. What'd you do? Where were you at with the wine? You're stuck with a cellar, and so how did you play that through with the community in mind?
Yeah. So I mean, we had our ideas on what we think people like, but at the same time, sometimes people tell us different things, right? And I think
Always.
part of that is constantly asking questions and listening. People come in, do you have this? Do you have that? I mean, we were doing anything from, Chris was like sous vide and like pork chops with like herbs, and so people, all they had to do was just grill them on each side, a couple minutes. And we were selling, at one time we were selling like grains, we were selling like all kinds of shit, and some things worked and some things didn't work. And one of the things that luckily did work was the pasta kits were a big success. Chris was putting everything you needed to make as good as pasta as we could do in the restaurant without sacrificing it in a to-go box, which, you know, to be honest, wasn't like an easy thing because I'm like the guy that's like, just cook the damn pasta, put it in a box, right?
Right, yeah.
And then he's like, hey, like
That's not what I make.
no, yeah, and
Right.
like it, and at the time you're like, we're in a damn pandemic, just put it in a box, you know. And but he wanted to give himself more work and give a product that's better, and so I was at the end of the day, in retrospect, it was an amazing effort, and people loved them. People still ask for them, and I think if we ever, could get to a point where we could think about other things, I think some kind of project like that where you could order pasta in a box and basically
You figured it out.
read
It's
the
how do you-
directions. How do
Yeah.
you scale it? So.
Right.
And then the wine, we're lucky that we've built a beautiful wine community, and that ranges from anything from the person who knows that I'm going to pick out the best $15 to $20 bottle of wine for them to the person who comes and is like, hey, I know Rouleau's out. What do you have from Rouleau? I'm like, it's a special occasion. So there's all that, there's that range of people, and I think people ultimately supported. I had a lot of private clients that, I was just stocking their cellars, and then there was other people who were every Tuesday they would come in and say, what am I going to eat with this, or what am I going to eat with that, or what am I going to drink with this, or what am I going to drink with that? And so, it was amazing.
Am I hearing that the wine that you had and you were shut down and you had a cellar full of wine, you got some cash together by selling it to clients and in the store and all of that, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Did you sell it all down, or did you sell most of it, or you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I took my inventory down a crazy amount, and
You needed the cash flow.
Needed the cash, and in retrospect, I'm glad I did it, but at the same time, I had no idea that the community was going to be so supportive. So I think we could have probably kept some of the higher end things and absorbed that, but we also did some other things. We were doing stuff for like the staff fund, where I was putting wines on Instagram and saying, hey, all the profits from this wine will go to our staff fund, and then,
Motivates people more.
for sure. But like, we weren't necessarily making any money off of it, so therefore it was like a mixed bag of how we were loosening up the capital, right? And
Very
there was some. I think I also posted on the Instagram that it was like, if you were a recently unemployed restaurant worker and you wanted a wine for the pandemic and your quarantine, you could buy it at cost.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so like
That's thinking about the community and what's important to them.
Yeah, and there was some people that were, because community extends beyond our neighborhood. Community is the wine community, right?
Well, community's community.
Yeah.
It could be within a block or in the world.
Exactly.
It's a mindset.
Exactly.
So I agree with that. We got to take a break soon, but I wanted to ask you, because of the pandemic, spotlight's been brought on a lot of things, in the business: equality, diversity, pay. Do you think we will get to a point where, there's a better employee life-work balance? Because there are many instances, and it's a tough business, where that really doesn't happen. I'm guessing you practice that. If you have this community mindset, that goes to your employees. I doubt you ignore them. But you must know and see around, a lot of restaurants where it's just a dreadful, environment. Do we think because of the pandemic, people will be a little more, aware of that? What's your feelings?
I think right now you have to be. I think the ball's in the employees'
Right.
court, right? And
It's a buyer's market.
for sure. And
Yeah.
they could work. People could work wherever they want, and they could pretty much set their salaries. Or like
Right.
there's right now it's crazy, and
So that's forcing it, which is not a bad thing.
not a bad thing.
If you're doing it and you could do more, that's good. If you're the asshole that didn't, you're forced. So there's change to some
Yeah.
long way, but change.
And I hope that some of these owner operated businesses that don't necessarily have the resources to to get all the talent that some of these bigger restaurants could, maybe it evens the playing field for them. I don't know that that's true, but if I could say, hey, come work for me, and you'll make this much, but you'll have you'll work my servers work less than 35 hours, 35 at the most a week, and they make decent money, and they really, it's all like people that have gone on to be managers or this and that, and now they're servers, they're bartenders, and they're happy. They could wear whatever they want to work. They, like I said, they make decent money, and they don't have somebody like constantly like micromanaging them. So
Quality of life. Being happy.
For sure.
Big value to that.
I think Chris and I, and hopefully other people, have always, you always work somewhere and you always then paint a picture of what your place would be based on you being the employee, right? And then you say this, that, the other thing, but then when you plug it into the numbers, you're like, oh shit, maybe I can't offer everyone benefits,
right.
Or maybe I can't give that the employee R&D stipend, that was
right.
one of them, right? Like maybe you can't do that stuff, but I think we're definitely to a point where we're trying to. Chris wanted to start out the restaurant with hospitality included because he was thinking about why the cooks don't make. He wanted a more equitable.
Was Danny Meyer doing it then?
He was.
The idea was out there and even executed.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like very reluctant to do it, and I ultimately talked him out of it. But it's not because I didn't subscribe to the theory. It was more so I was scared that we were a new restaurant that like would have the price. People weren't ready to pay those prices for the product, right? And so it was like a good idea, but I was scared of it, right? And that's like the same thing with paying your. I think you used to be like, cool, what is the most talented person, like line cook, dishwasher, that I could get at the lowest amount of money? But now you're like, and like I realize that that's fucked up. But now I'm like, now we're thinking, it's like, what's the most we could pay and still be a profitable restaurant? So we're paying all of our people, like our back of house, like way more than we ever did, and hopefully that like makes their lives better,
right? And loyal, and you don't have to worry about turnover and all that. That's that answers the question.
I want to ask my line cooks like where they're going out on their days off, and back in the day when we used to work at restaurants, it's like they weren't going anywhere because they couldn't afford to go anywhere, and like we were sitting at a family meal table at Maialino, and you'd be like, hey, where'd you go? And all the front of house people were like, I went here, I went there, and all the back house people were like, nah, I cooked.
Looking at you like with a snarl.
And like, yeah, we want to.
Well, listen, you've created, that kind of environment, which, hopefully people will emulate, which is, a cool thing. James, we got to take a quick break. We're talking to James O'Brien. James is the proprietor of Popina in Brooklyn. When we come back, I want to talk about I want to talk about the restaurant. I want to get into some wines and all of that, and a few other things. You're listening to The Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. In Wisconsin, cheese is our thing. Wisconsin is the only state in the country that requires a license to make cheese. From curds to cheddar, blue to brick, Wisconsin cheesemakers can do it all. We blend tradition with innovation to create an incredible variety of cheeses that you just can't get anywhere else. You've heard of a PhD, but have you heard of a PH cheese? Otherwise known as the Wisconsin Master Cheesemaker Program. This rigorous study of cheese is an elite accomplishment earned by only 80 talented cheesemakers in Wisconsin, and the program is only one of 2 in the world. Becoming a master cheesemaker takes 13 years and is basically like a doctorate in a specific variety of cheese, with intense requirements to succeed. Our Master Cheesemaker program allows makers to perfect both the art and science of their craft in a tradition so rich you can taste it. Find your next favorite cheese and meet our makers at wisconsincheese.com.
All right, we're back. We're back with my guest, James O'Brien. James, along with his partner, Chris McDade, opened Popina in Brooklyn, and it's become a highly admired destination, and we're going to talk about the place, and you'll understand why. So we talked about during COVID, you sort of became this community place with pasta kits, and you were selling wine and all of that stuff. On the wine list, are you back to building it up to where it is, or it's a process? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely...
is it a cash thing? Like, how much can I buy if the flow isn't, all there yet?
Yeah, I mean, the wine list is as big as it's ever been. Almost to... I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, I used to... The challenge of making a small wine list was really fun. And the fact that people would talk about Popina's wine list when it was small was like actually the most exciting, because you could always get wine and dump it on a list, right? And I looked at my inventory the other day and I was like, oh shit, I was like, I need to like dial this back, not even for like cash flow perspective, but more so for just having a tight list that like people
running away a little.
Yeah, people don't have to like think as much because you've done the work for them, right? And so yeah, I do think that the wine list is, maybe it doesn't have the vintage depth that it used to have. But we're still working on it and constantly evolving. And we're a small restaurant, so we don't always get a ton of allocated wine. So the list might have a lot of the list is like 1 to 3 bottles of things. So
yeah, but you're also the type of place where the people in the business, and they like the idea that it's at your place.
For sure. I
mean, it's not a get rich scheme, but it's cool that Popina's got a few bottles of my wine. Just
for sure. And hopefully it's the cheapest that people could actually drink it, and it doesn't just sit on a list. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of what you do. While I got you on that, I asked you before, anything out there, kind of rebooting the wine thing and being around during COVID, anything out there exciting you? Have you stumbled across or paid attention to regions that, you weren't drinking? I mean, are there a couple of cool things you could tell me about of note to you?
Sure.
Don't dig if it's not there.
Yeah. I mean, I am definitely... I drink the same stuff all the time. I wish I was a more...
Gee, I'm really surprised. Mr. Chicken Fingers.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I was a more curious sommelier. Yeah. But we went, Chris and I went on a trip with his wife, Natalie, who you might know. She does the beverage for all of Colicchio's restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
So her, Chris, our events manager, Sam, and I went to California. And when I first opened up the restaurant, we were very much into the idea of like an Italian list and an American list because we thought it reflected the food. But then like the cellar list would have global producers that we were excited to drink. And so after the wine shop thing and all that, we've kind of thrown away that ethos of
the
Italian
US.
Yeah, like now it's like you look at the regular list and there's French stuff and German stuff. And
is that more fun for you? I mean, you were disciplined to do Italian and US wines, but now is it more fun to...
it's certainly more fun, but it also, it exposes myself to, like, I love Spanish wine, and I never worked with Jose Pastor, and now I work with Jose Pastor, and it's like, I love everything that they do, and it's amazing. And had I not decided to open up the floodgates, I wouldn't have more experience in like a more global approach. That being said, we went out to California, and California is like one of those just American wine is unfortunately, it's always like one of the things I drink the least of, and I'm embarrassed about it. And
Me
I
too.
always,
And I didn't in the old days.
yeah, I mean, I always gravitate towards Italian or French wine, and then and so we went out there, and Chris had a rule. He's like, we only drink American wine out here. He's like, we have to drink not only American but California wine. And so we were out there for a couple days. We went to Napa, Sonoma. We hit up a bunch of our friends, anyone from Maria Sinsky to Pax and Patrick, and we went to go see Literai, and it was an amazing kind of rebirth, not rebirth, or like I was. It filled up the tank as far as my love for American wine and why we should drink it. And
So one of my questions was, California Napa wines are famous for being over the top and fruity and all of that stuff. So you answered the question to some extent. Tell me some wines from Napa and California that don't do that. And Ted Literai has been doing that forever.
Sure.
Pax and, Patrick's got a new project. Some of the other people. Those Dan Petrosky left Larkmead
Sure.
to concentrate on Massican, Steve Mathiasen, all that stuff. What we agree there's still that big unctuous, market and all that. But are you seeing more and more, producers that care about sustainability, organics, not high alcohol wines?
no, without a doubt.
More now than
Yeah, more now, and I think they're, even what they're doing over at Pax and Patrick is, they have multiple winemakers are making wine in their
Talk about
facility.
community.
And so I think doing stuff like that is allowing them to hopefully offer the wines at a more economical. Because
Yes.
sometimes American wines, we were like, why are they so expensive?
because of the land and the processing everything.
Exactly.
They have the community. Yeah, that's a good point because that cost is shared.
Yeah.
I credit Pax for that. I think.
I mean, the amount of people that actually came, I didn't realize how many people worked under him, and went on to do amazing things. I mean,
But think about the place alone: Jamie Motley,
I love it,
Martha,
yeah.
Patrick,
Scott.
Jolie
Yeah.
Lade. I mean,
Exactly.
one of the Mondavis is there, Rain or something.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he's got a lot of cool stuff going on. All right, so Spanish wines caught your attention. You focused in on the good California wines on the trip. So you did a little traveling and all of that. Tell me. It's funny because you're not one of these like formal wine guys. I mean, which I love. That's why you're here. I don't want to, a CMS guy or whatever. Tell me the list. What's the philosophy or what's the mission? It's admired. People, it's notable to them. Obviously, you thought this is the kind of stuff, and it could be as simple as it's what I like or it matches the food, which is an important thing too. What's that mission there, or what's
Sure.
that?
I think getting producers that are doing the right things, and we think Chris having a little one, we always talk about like what does the earth look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 100 years, and so I think sometimes we have to pay a little bit extra for things that are done the right way and that don't take the shortcuts. And so the wine list definitely reflects that ethos of people doing the right things. And these are generally the wines that we like anyway, finished result, but it's also, I mean, you should have saw Chris when we went to Literai, when he saw like they're growing everything all over the property and the biodynamics, and like it's really cool, and that makes you want to support those wines even more because they're thinking about the land and they're not just taking from it, they're giving back.
So in the old days, wasn't that long ago. It's like, so you favor natural producers. Well, that line is, BS. But it's really about, people who care about, the land and how they make it. And it even goes further. You didn't mention, I know you're thinking of how they treat their employees,
Without a doubt.
all of that stuff. So that's sort of the producers that you have in there. And I'm sure most of them have a good story behind.
Yeah, and we just want the delicious wine. Chris is a badass chef, and he cooks some of my favorite food that I've ever had, and to have his pasta.
He took a chicken finger and made it hot.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
We'll talk about that in a second.
I love it.
So that's the list. How big is the list?
Oh, probably too big now.
You said it's kind of bigger now.
Yeah, I mean,
what are we talking range wise?
I mean, I would probably say there's, I don't know, probably like, because there's stuff that I like have on the list that's not on the list, and we're doing this like wine club that I have like wines for that. So I mean, probably like in the cellar alone, there's probably close to, different SKUs. There's probably up like close to like 400 or 500.
And years ago, it was like 250, 300.
Oh, I was like, well, that's the funny thing too about the pandemic that I was talking to somebody the other day. I used to just the list was contained by how many producers I could fit on one printed page. We don't print menus anymore, so it could just go and go and go. Yeah, there's no bounds,
That's crazy. Is by the glass important?
For sure. I mean, how many times have you gone to a wine restaurant and been like, wine restaurant? Did anyone tell the person making the list that the people like to drink by the glass wines? And it was, I get it. By the glass is like your moneymaker, and you want to make sure the margins are right. But
why can't it be right every time?
I pour a different champagne for $25. No matter, it could be anything from Filane to Bouchard to Pierre Peters. Right now is Moulin Leroux. To me, there's always some really great glass pours that I'm not just phoning them in. It's not.
Yeah,
it's
thoughtful.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Because guess what? At the end of the night, I might want a glass of wine.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's, like you said, people kind of shrug it off. It's a good opportunity to be compatible with the food and introduce people to great wines. You alluded to this before, that you have, some vintage stuff in the cellar. I mean, that sounds like a reserve list or something. I mean, do you have that? I mean, do you have that because some guy's going to walk in and ask for a rouleau, or why do you have a reserve list?
Two reasons. One, I want to, reserve list is part of the first reason I had the reserve list, even in the early days when the reserve list might have only been 10 bottles that I brought, like, privately consigned to the restaurant myself, right? And I don't want to, I don't want to bog down people. Right now we don't have a sommelier that's like working the floor that could help people with a big wine list. So I don't want to bog people down. I want to do the work ahead of time and give people a very streamlined list of some great options. And I want them to feel good about it and not feel like, oh, wow, this is overwhelming. So the reserve list allows me to have wines that people don't have to get caught up on. They just look at the regular list. They say, oh, cool, this is my range.
Separated.
Boom. And then if the people that are looking at the cellar list are more of these more curious wine nerd type of people that like to have the options, and they don't really necessarily need the help picking a wine because they know what they want. So, right. But it was important to me to have a reserve list because I wanted, one, again, Chris is a great chef, and to have great wines with his food is a pretty magical thing. And two, it's just the stuff that I like to drink and I love. And how cool is it that I pride myself on offering it at the cheapest you could ever get it. I wasn't.
Well, that's a mantra that exists there.
Yeah,
you're not going to make it up on the reserve list. That's not the way you think.
For sure. I grew up reading, when I say grew up, I mean, I was in Maialino, reading about Rouleau and Dovisad, and I could never afford to drink those wines. And now it's cool, come to Popina, you could drink those wines.
Right. There's a market. You can't poo-poo the people who want that, or a $20, whatever. You mentioned sommeliers. Are the days of restaurants having sommeliers or multiple sommeliers numbered, gone? I mean, are we going to come back to that?
I mean, I don't know. It's interesting, right? Because here you have, for me, it's I always think about getting somebody as far as to come to work at Popina that is multidimensional and like wears a bunch of different hats and likes
Not just the nerdy wine guy.
likes to do everything.
Right.
That being said, I think some restaurants could probably prove that if they have a sommelier on the floor, then their numbers might go up because people are selling more wine or dedicated to that. And so I guess for some models it works, but for us it doesn't.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
I could see why it doesn't work for you, but I could see other places. Certain groups have these big restaurants, big net customers.
Sure.
Push it out, get them into a second bottle. We got to wrap up pretty soon because I want you to do the wine list and I want to taste that rosé. Your menu is smallish, well thought out. It's definitely eclectic. It's Italian food that has a southern flair. Fair?
Yeah.
Because Chris is from
Georgia.
But give me an example of, Italian food with a southern flair, specifically like dish-wise.
Sure.
How does he execute that?
Well, one of my favorite dishes of all time was pappardelle with ham hocks, shishito, and collard greens. And the
Sounds funky, but it's awesome.
Oh,
probably.
it's so good. And so pappardelle being the Italian,
Fat, wide pasta.
Yeah, and then you had ham hocks, which a lot
pancetta.
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, ham hocks, what the, and collard greens. I was like, I don't really like collard greens, and all these things that
probably never ate a lot of them.
Well, you had these preconceived notions of,
right.
and
That's what it was.
and Chris has done an amazing job at opening my eyes to things that I was just not into because maybe I'm a picky eater, maybe I'm from New Jersey, maybe any of these things. But I mean, even like he just put out a tinned fish book, and I never ate tinned fish. And guess what I ate for dinner last night? I was like, I'm home by myself. Tinned fish, cool.
Part of that is because you're a lazy shit.
Yeah.
but tinned fish is hot.
Yeah.
You see it Instagram, but the fact that a guy like Chris, does a book means people are paying attention.
Yeah, for sure.
So stuff like that where he takes, classic pappardelle ingredients, but kind of switches them and it works really.
Braising down the ham hocks, using that as like the sauce for the pasta.
One of the great Italian dishes is a Milanese.
Sure.
A pounded down, chopped chicken, whatever, and fried beautifully. What do you guys do with that? That's a big hit dish there, right?
Yeah, he actually tried to take it off for a little bit, and I was like, "Yo,
bad idea."
So basically, not from Georgia, but from the South. Nashville. They do their Nashville hot chicken, right? So he developed like a spice blend that. It's funny. I always like joke around that I never know the exact ingredients, and I think he does that on purpose. But it always trails off. He's always like cayenne, paprika, and then like 3 different types of chili, and then all of a sudden it's like
leaves the secret ingredients out, you bastard.
Exactly.
I get that. So the menu's definitely seasonal and ingredient driven.
Yeah.
I'm just curious with all the BS going on. Is it tough to get? Certain like food supplies and all that, or you don't really feel that? I mean, there's an abundance of farmers and stuff around New York.
I mean, to my dismay, Chris like puts on stuff that is like available, like so meaning our fishermen come in and they're like, "Hey, we got all this bluefish," Oof. I'm like, nah, bluefish sucks. He's like, "No, I'm gonna this is what we need to eat." And he makes a delicious blackened bluefish right now, and it's on the menu.
That's the only way to do it is blacken it. Trust me.
And so I think I'm trying to change my mentality on like, hey, like we don't always need to like go for the most delicious, insert whatever fish you want that you eat all the time that everyone eats. And it's like, okay, like maybe we eat bluefish, maybe we eat mackerel, maybe we eat skate or all these things. I mean, I'm not really sold on catfish, but it's,
you're saying fishy and weird fish.
Yeah.
You'll have sea robin on the list.
Oh man, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, so the menu is very interesting. We gotta move on to our wine list. We're running out of time. But let me ask you this last question. A place like yours, Does the vibe exist, or would it be different if it was like in Manhattan or something? I mean, is being in Brooklyn part of the fabric, or what you've done is what it is, and that can go anywhere? Up in Hudson County, in the East Village, West Village, Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that what we do would work anywhere. You know, we've certainly talked about Popina in different locations, not only in this city but also in other cities. Chris, I always have a feeling that Chris is a Southern boy at heart, and I feel like at some point in his future he will end up in like back down south, whether
Yeah.
it's Charleston or and so I think we think about our restaurant and how it could, be in other places, but still be true to itself. And
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
I just thought people are so caught up with Brooklyn. Like, this is Brooklyn, man. That's why this
Yeah,
is cool.
nah.
It's cool because it's cool, not because it's in Brooklyn.
for sure, we don't have like the cool bartender with all the tattoos and earrings, and we have the bartender or the server that's hospitable, and hospitality transcends everything.
Right. You did Charleston before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I tried to get in and I couldn't. I wound up with who's the guy from Olmsted, which was no letdown.
Yeah.
That, either one I figured if I got in.
Yeah, no, that was-
would you do that again? Festivals like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, that was awesome right before. That was my first time at the Charleston Food and Wine Festival, and
Good town for food.
oh yeah, it was great, and like Graf Wine Bar was awesome. I think I went there 3 times in one day.
Femi and Miles have been on the show. We broadcast from down there. They're on. I think they've been on 4 years.
Oh yeah, they're awesome.
All right, let's do the wine list. The wine list is 5 questions. We ask all our guests that come through to answer the wine list. Same 5 questions. So the people that preceded you were asked the same questions. We don't have a lot of time here. I'm warning you. All right? 5 questions. Don't dwell on them. Give me your best answers. So first question is, what are you drinking now? We may have sort of addressed that, but what's in your fridge? What's on your table? What may be on the bar in the restaurant, that you're trying? Give me a few things.
Sure. So, like I said, if you look at my fridge at home, I'm a very drink the same shit all the time. It's white Burgundy, Chablis, like champagne, that kind of stuff.
So, good answer. Give me 2 things. You're obviously not drinking crazy expensive champagnes. What's like a good champagne? Shout one out.
Charton Taillé, Cuvée Saint Anne. I think I have a couple bottles of that in my fridge just because it could be an everyday champagne.
Good one. What about a Chablis? Without going Davosset, even
Yeah,
Tribute.
Tribute. Yeah,
Tribute
exactly.
is good.
Yeah, I mean, you
It's
get
the lower end of that.
You get a bottle of that for $40.
Right, which really plays up.
Yeah.
All right, good. We're doing a good job on that. Favorite wine and food pairing? Nerdiest question on it, but we know it's not something you can eat every night, every month. But what's like? Yeah, that works.
Sure. I really love white Burgundy and spaghetti with anchovies, like spaghetti con lechuga.
Is that like a little olive oil and
butter, even more
Okay.
decadent.
Butter and anchovies is like a thing.
It's
man.
a magical thing.
Yeah.
So that and like a beautiful white Burgundy, like some maybe even like more voluptuous, like Merceau.
I was gonna say it has to
Yeah.
have body
Yeah.
to cut through all that
For
butter
sure.
and salt. And all. That's a good one. That may be a first. All right, I know you work hard, and I know we went through a pandemic, but favorite wine restaurant and our bar. And you're the example because it's a place you walk into that has a vibe, that has the list, that have people that are enthusiastic about it. Outside of you, I mean, who's like that?
Being that I work in South Brooklyn,
Okay.
I go all the time. I go to Frank's Wine Bar or
John Patterson.
or Red Hook Tavern, right?
Billy
I think
Gurney.
the difference in between those is that Prime Meat or Frank's Wine Bar, John and Matt do an amazing job curating that list, and it's like everything, all like the boring things that I love to drink, that they love to drink, all like white Burgundy, Chenin Blanc, all champagne, and then they also have like they do a great job in having some of these other out of the box kind of things, and that's what I love also about going down to Red Hook Tavern is. Rebecca does an amazing job on she always has me drinking stuff. She basically calls me boring all the time, and she's like, how many times are you gonna drink Lafon or Rouleau, or drink something else, right? So she'll always pour me something, some like crazy shit that I have no idea of, and so I go to like Frank's to drink the stuff that I know and love, and I go to there to like drink some new. But as far as like a vibe goes, I live in Manhattan, and I get into some trouble over at
Where?
Blue Ribbon. It's like you go to Blue Ribbon, you spend a little bit more than you want to spend, but you're eating like shrimp cocktail and
That's
French
been an
fries.
industry hangout for 20 years.
And that's a vibe, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good vibe.
It makes me want to
Yeah.
drink better wine that I probably
Yeah.
should be drinking.
Yeah, and
you know?
they're conscious of that, so it's there, which is pretty. Those are good ones. Fourth question: favorite all-time wine. The question initially was, James, what was like the most expensive rare wine you ever drank? Don't care about that anymore. What's that wine or those couple of wines that had an impact on you? Like we were talking about bartending and your girlfriend up the game, and then over at Danny Myers, you met people. Were there wines along the way that kind of defined?
Yeah.
Can you think of one or two?
For sure. Early on, it was Jeff used to let us drink. Jeff used to let us purchase wines from like the cellar at cost, and Myelino had like a really insane Poggio de Soto and Bartolo Mascarello, and so I remember one time for a special occasion, I got I think for $70 or something, I bought a '01 Mascarello, and it was just like, holy shit. It definitely, because like at the time I was just very much getting into it. I knew who Bartolo was and I read all about him, but actually having that wine and experiencing that was awesome. And then as I progressed, you continue. Wine is very contextual, right? I think some of my favorite bottles are around people that I just really want to enjoy, right?
Some people have answered the question. Wine with people. Forget the wine.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, so like this is funny, right? Like because I've listened to your show before, and I'm like, oh yeah, that 86 Coche Rougeau that I drank was like probably like the most amazing like experience of like wine, just wine, right? But then I was like, that time that I drank a $15 Donna's cooperative Nebbiolo when I was skiing in Courmayeur with a bunch of friends.
That was the whole deal.
That was better.
Yeah.
Better. And like, I don't even have that wine on my wine list or anything because but like, holy shit, that was like magical. That with some like kind of meat ragu up in a lodge, it's snowing out. It's like, that's it,
That's what you remember.
Yeah.
Those are two good examples. I didn't mention this, but we post all this stuff because the reason I'm asking you is, you're around it so much and people are interested. They always want to be tipped off,
Sure.
To stuff or what people are thinking. Everything you've told me during this interview leads me to believe that you may be able to answer the last question better than anybody that's ever walked through these doors. Very little pressure on you. But really, so the question is, best wine around $15-$20 retail, okay? And the setup has always been, I have kids in their like 20s, higher 20s. They're going to dinner parties. They got to get gifts. They're done with that supermarket wine.
Yeah.
But they can't roll out like 40. So like that wine you talked about skiing, where is like the value and the wow in 15, 20, $22? Give me a red, give me a white. You can give me 1, 2. You could do region, like Muscadet is a good value. What comes to mind?
I think light skin grapes from Piedmont, say Ruque or Grignolino or Fresia. I think those are Pella I think you could get Pella Verga from Castello de Verduno for $25 maybe,
and they're a good producer.
Or La Maraja does a Fresia or a Grignolino for probably retails around $25, and I think those.
Great
I don't know.
value.
I'm obsessed with those like light bright, maybe with a little chill. Those I think are an insane value. I think it's just harder maybe to like find them if you're outside of like a major market.
Right. That's going to be a problem anyway.
Yeah. And then white wise, I was actually, funny enough, I was just talking with John Bonet. He was at Popina the other day, and
I saw him post.
Yeah, and we were talking about he drank Fiano there, and I was and Chiro Picarelli is like, Fianos. I mean, wow. I mean, it over delivers every time, and so I think that's another producer that you could probably get for that 25 mark, or even like Verdicchio. Verdicchio. We always, I always joke. One of my friends would always, he's in Hawaii right now, and we always joke that Verdicchio is the Italian Chablis, which I don't know that I agree with it.
I don't agree with that.
But he always
it begs for some kind of comparison, but I don't know if that's the right one.
But some amazing value in that,
I think those are all good suggestions. And I will, like I said, post them and spell everything out, Frasier, how you spell it, Grigolino, so people know what we're talking about. All right, we got to wrap up the show. I'm glad that you agreed to bring in a bottle of wine. We do a weekly wine sip. Every week we taste a different wine on air. This week we're tasting a wine. The grape is Rosese. The producer is Punta Crena.
Yep.
And it is imported by Kermit Lynch, so right out of the chute, we know it's good. And it is a Vigneto Tasco? Frasco? What is that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so tell me a little about this wine. It's Ligurian.
Yeah.
Wait, what does that say?
Is that Isacco?
Is it Isacco? Isacco.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it's a red wine. It's the Rosese grape. So let's talk about the grape first. What are the characteristics, qualities of the grape?
So Rosese was always one of those grapes that we used as like a secret weapon at Maialino, when it was, you would normally go white, but somebody wanted red.
Or meets in the middle.
Yeah, and it's in Liguria they're planting on like the side of these mountains, right? So it's all like hand harvested, and it's very, it's backbreaking work, right? Like just the idea that people are out doing that is amazing, and I feel like there's like a nice like saline quality to it that like pairs well with like fish, or just pretty much anything. High acidity. It has like a little savory kind of spice element to it, so it just has like a lot going on for a very simple indigenous grape, and
what looks like a lighter red.
For sure.
It's got the body and those nuances and all of that. Tell me about Crena.
So Punta Crena, they do some awesome stuff. They do a Pigato, which I love, a Vermentino.
Their Vermentino is good?
Yeah, for sure. And
Liguria is one of the places where the better Vermentinos are kicked out, right?
For sure. And it kind of like makes sense, right? When you think of what are people over in Liguria and the Cinque Terre, like what are they eating and what are they drinking? And I think their wines, complement each other. So
the vintage year is 2019. Good wine to drink, current vintages. We're not putting this thing away for... You could, but...
Yeah.
All right, so color it's sort of that, clear... Not clear. How would you describe the color? Like a light purple, translucent?
Yeah, I think more...
Pinot Noirish?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe a little even more like ruby than purple.
Yes, you're right about the ruby. It's not purple. I suck at this, but when forced to do it, I could do it. What do we get on the nose? There's an interesting overall nose to it. I can't describe it, but what do you think? Well, it's like very prevailing. It's not. I get that first. If you throw things out, maybe I'll go, oh yeah. But what do you get on the nose?
I think it's definitely like red fruit driven, right?
Definitely red fruit.
You got your like strawberry, or maybe even like a kind of like
almost like rhubarb. As I kind of suck it in, you get the strawberry. Red fruit was never an issue, but as I stay with it, more strawberry than rhubarb. But that's in there.
And also like maybe like a peppery spice or something like that,
Yeah, which you wouldn't expect from this. All right, mouthfeel. It's kind of a, not in a negative way, a thinner wine because of it. So it's kind of a medium mouthfeel, right?
Yeah. High acidity.
What kind of alcohol? Is it medium, low?
I think it's pretty low.
Let me see if it's on the bottle. Because you could knock this stuff 12.5, so that's easy to knock out 2 bottles, a couple hours with some food and all of that.
There you go.
All right, palate. Does the palate match the nose as far as descriptors? What are we getting on the palate?
Yeah, I think so. I think you get a lot of that like red fruit, the strawberry.
I think the spice is there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the salinity is there. So I think the palate does match the nose. What are we looking at in the restaurant if we order a bottle of this?
I think this comes in. Well, funny enough, I think we're actually pouring it by the glass right now. So you could get this. I think we do it for $16 or $17 by the glass, and
That's awesome.
yeah, this is a wine that I used to order so much of and no problem, but now
hard to get.
Yeah,
now.
now it's like my guy's like, hey, I got 5 cases for you. I'm like, that's it. I was like, I want to pour this all summer,
That sucks. All right, so it's the 2019 Punta Crena Rosese. It's the Vigneto Isacco, we figured out, 2019. And this is a wine from Liguria, and it's imported by Kermit Lynch, so we know it's good. All right, James, we got to wrap up. You did mention what foods would pair with this, so I don't have to ask you that. All right, if you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's sam@thegrapenation.com. Please subscribe to the Grape Nation podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. Follow us on Facebook at The Grape Nation. On Instagram, we're at SBenRuby. On Twitter, we're at BenRuby. I know, confusing, but use the hashtag The Grape Nation on both to get to us. We're trying to build a community on Clubhouse, so follow us at BenRuby. Like I said, we'll post James' wine list, and I will list the weekly wine sip so that you could try to look for it on all our social media sites. We'll start posting everything tomorrow through next week. James, tell me a couple things. If we want to follow you, because you sound like a fun, nice, interesting guy that likes chicken fingers and champagne and hot sauce.
It's a simple guy.
Right. Where can we follow you?
OB's World on Instagram.
OBS
World. Yep.
WORLD. That's James' personal account.
Yep.
And then the restaurant?
The restaurant is Popina NYC.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you Google Popina, it'll take you to their website.
Yeah, for
you have
sure.
menus and all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
and I'm pretty sure the hours of operation are correct, but it's a
give him a call
Not
if
only
you have
the
any
wine guy,
hesitation.
but I do a little of everything. So
Do you do any Resi or TikTok or any of that
yeah,
stuff?
we're on Resi.
Okay.
So Resi, but we're also a neighborhood restaurant, so we always like leave some room for walk-ins.
Good for you.
Right now we're doing all outside dining. We have an insane backyard.
Yeah, we didn't even get into the story about the side of the restaurant
Yeah,
and the landlord, the back. But you've been known for that garden.
Yeah, for sure. It's like every review that you always read, it's like whether it's 5 stars or 1 star, it's always like beautiful backyard, and then it's either like amazing food or bad wine list or what, I don't know.
So frustrating.
but it always starts out beautiful backyard.
Yeah, if you look at my show reviews, it's like he talks too much. Great guest, talks over guests. All true. You sat here, I had to sit on my hands.
Why do you got to talk so much?
Whatever. All right, listen, we got to go. Thank you to our guest, James O'Brien. James O'Brien from Popina with his partner, Chris McDade. Thank you to our engineer, first time together, me and Liam, and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam BenRuby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation. The Grape Nation is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. and we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. And thanks for listening.